start this video. Oh, great. Perfect recording. All right, I'm Khafre Marbo, and I am an assistant professor here at CCA. This is my 7th year of teaching, and I teach in ceramics and the first year program primarily, and I have the honor of teaching one of the senior projects courses this semester. Today's event is very exciting because we have students from many different majors and senior projects courses. So you'll see there's lots of faculty in the audience here, and it's a really nice way for us to come together as a community, especially during these trying times. So for this event today, we're going to feature 10-minute student presentations, and there are 6 of them. And then right after the 10-minute presentation, we'll have 10 minutes of responses from arts professionals. And in the online presentations, we're going to celebrate each student's dedication to art making during their time at CCA. And it's also a way to show their work to our community and to friends and family and the general public. The students will be presenting, we'll have respondents commenting, and all of your comments, please include them in the chat. And the chat feature, if you haven't noted that, is on the bottom of your screen, so please find that. And the chats will be recorded. So every student will be able to read them later on, which is really exciting. Let's see, and then the other thing that I'm going to put into the chat is the fact that obviously these sessions are recorded. So if for some reason your friend or your family member or a fellow student couldn't see the presentations, they'll be able to do that later on. And I'll include that link. Please, please, please keep yourself muted if you can. It's really important to try to maintain focus during what will be a pretty fast-paced presentation schedule because we have 6 wonderful students sharing their work. And to those students, thank you, Jordan and Michael, Keston, Ethan, Aamirah, and Jonathan for sharing this work with us today. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate you. The 2 respondents that we have today are Leandra Burnett, who is a curatorial practice student at CCA, and I'm going to quickly read her bio. Leandra is a designer, curator, and graduate student in architecture history, theory experiments, and curatorial practice at CCA. She was a founding director of Front Space, one of Kansas City's longest-running artist-led organizations, and recipient of the Rauschenberg Foundation's Seed Grant for groundbreaking projects in the arts. She was the archivist for the estate of experimental architect Levis Woods and through 2020, and she was co-director of CCA's Paulette Long and Shepard Pollock Art Community Experiment, also known as Play Space. She is a board director for Holes in the Wall Collective, a New York-based nonprofit that hosts creative residencies and community-sponsored actions. So thank you, Leandra, for joining us today. Our second respondent is Trena Noval, who teaches in our UDIST program. And Trena is an artist, researcher, educator, and writer whose work engages participatory strategies, cross-disciplinary platforms, and social engagement. Her collaborative work and community-centered projects have been engaged widely, including at the Oakland Museum of California, the Exploratorium, Montalvo Art Center, the National Gallery of Modern Art in Bangalore, the Museum of Goa, the Museum of Baroda, the Chennai Biennial in India, the David Ireland House 500 Cap Street Foundation, the Grauerle and Yerba Buena Center for the Arts in San Francisco. She has received public art commissions from the City of San Jose, Intersection for the Arts, the City of Santa Rosa, and Montalvo Art Center, and is currently working on a new public commission for the City of San Jose that explores how to move a city towards sustainability through everyday actions. She is an adjunct professor at CCA in the UDIST program. So thank you both so much for joining us today. It's lovely to have you here. Also a big thank you to Jamie Austin and the whole exhibitions team for putting this together. It's a lot of work and a lot of logistics, and we deeply appreciate all that you do and your team, obviously. And thank you also to the faculty who are present and joining us today. Before we begin with Jonathan, I would like to offer the following land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts campuses are located in the Hoi Chin and Yelamu, also known as Oakland and San Francisco, on the unceded territories of Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systematic destruction of their communities and culture. CCA honors Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, here and around the world. And we wish to pay respect to local elders, including those of the lands from which you are joining us virtually today. If you are unsure of whose land you are currently residing upon, we highly encourage that you visit nativeland.ca, and I'll put that website in the chat as well. So to kick off our presentations, Shalini, I invite you to introduce our first student, Jonathan, and following that, I will introduce Michael, the second student speaking. So Shalini, please take it away.
Thank you, Kari. And I just wanted to say how delighted and honored I am to join today. And I think the first student is Jordan. So just to clarify, Jordan Barbosa.
Thank you. Sorry, Jordan.
And I am just going to take a moment to introduce Jordan. I've had the absolute delight and pleasure of working with Jordan this semester. And not only have we had these amazing conversations around creativity, clarity, knowing ourselves in the work. Jordan brings so much passion to the work and is a visionary, and you'll see that today. And also, I just wanted to say I've really enjoyed our conversations. They have been actually, I've been learning a lot from them. And so I just wanted to just kind of express my gratitude to Jordan as well. And I'll let Jordan take it from here.
Thank you, Shalini. I appreciate it. It has been a great pleasure of mine too, to have had studied under you during my last semester at CCA. So I guess let's just get into it. Now, before I do go further, I just want to make sure that everyone can see my screen. I know we've been having some technical difficulties. Can everyone see my stuff?
Yes, we can see your screen. Mm-hmm.
Terrific. Thank you so much. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jordan Barbosa. I'm an individualized major, and this is my senior conversation presentation for all of you. I'm sorry. There we go. So I was born in San Jose, California during the late 90s when the .com was booming. Through my mother's personal interest, I developed a really keen interest in fashion. And after high school, I decided to enroll at the Academy of Art University, majoring in fashion design. I got really tired of how robotic my industry had seemed, and I was constantly told how unmarketable and uncostume my garments were. So I was quite discouraged and thought about dropping out a couple of times to pursue something like corporate rating. When I transferred to CCA, I decided that to give fashion another try, but it really just wasn't for me. So I did a lot of soul searching and realized that what I wanted to do was pursue fashion as a conceptual artist. So I switched to the individualized program, and I am here today, and it has been really amazing to be able to pursue fashion my own way. Not as a product, but actually as an art form. And during my journey, I've really come to learn a lot about myself and try to incorporate a more humane perspective on fashion. I like to use fashion to talk about really prevalent issues today, like mental health, feminism, political landscape, emotional sustainability. And I think that that is rather unique, considering that, at least in my perspective, fashion is really meant to distract us. We look at the pretty parts of it, when it is truly quite a very vicious industry. So that's what I wanted to share with all of you guys today. In 2018, my persistence paid off, and I was hired as an apprentice couturier and assistant designer for a well-known Bay Area fashion designer and artist, and I'm currently still working with them. So now maybe we should move on to my art pieces, or I'm sorry, my artistic influences, my apologies. I really enjoy Tupac Shakur and Alexander McQueen. There is a term for artists who sort of break the mold and are really anarchistic, if I may say, in the field of art and design, and that is the term enfant terrible, which is French for the terrible child. And I really draw a lot of inspiration from these two figures, and I try to incorporate that into my art, this rebellious vision. So first, I would like to talk about some of my early work. The piece to the left is called Chimera, and I did this for my Writing 2 class. This piece is essentially what I envision, my own personal take on what I think a chimera would be. We have the wings of the butterfly, the tail of the and horns of the dragon, and the body of the man. The wings are meant to represent this transformation, this sense of freedom. The horns and the tail are to represent the power that I believe that we must exercise as artists and designers in order to really take our art to places. And also just as a means of passion as well. I think with passion, there is power. The piece to the right is called Drink Until a Brighter Future, which has a really dark narrative, but it's a piece I did for a summer course. We had to speak upon a contemporary issue of today and relate it to dystopian themes. I really looked at ads from the 80s, cyberpunk motifs, as well as, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, my throat is really dry. I looked at cyberpunk motifs and the fetishization of technology and how it relates to today, really. This was also a direct response to COVID as well. And I'm sorry, with complete transparency, when COVID hit, I fell into a state of alcoholism. It felt like the world had been frozen. So I drank until a brighter future. I'm good today, but yeah, it was a very dark period. The next piece I want to share with all of you is called American Reich. This is a response to the 2016 inauguration of Donald Trump and the comparisons that we can draw from the Third Reich to the American political landscape. On the left, you will see a series of illustrations that I have done. And on the right, you will see a denim jacket that I have made. I chose denim for this project because it is an American product. The next really speaks to my overall approach to fashion. This piece is called The Daughters of Lilith. My inspiration that I drew from this is the Judeo-Islamic figure known as Lilith. She was labeled to be the first wife of Adam, but was cast out of heaven after she refused to submit to Adam, wanting to be on a place of equivalence. So she was demonized by God. This piece I really liked. I was trying to talk about the sexual repression that I believe that women go through in Abrahamic religions as well. I also think that realistically, that the fear that is born of this is because of man's inability to control himself. I believe that women have the sort of power over men, and I wanted to also showcase that with this piece. So with that being said, I think we should move on to my senior thesis, Metatron. Metatron, really, I've been in development with this project for quite a while now. With complete honesty, I was really bitter and jaded by my industry. I felt cast aside. I felt like I didn't belong. And when someone gave me a chance, I took it and ran with it. And I was given a skill set that, that I used as a weapon against people that I felt were oppressing me. It wasn't until I lost my dog on the 27th of February that I really began to understand what Metatron was subliminally about in my own mind. It was a means of protection, and I had bastardized it by misconstruing its real purpose. What I really wanted to be was protected with my own industry, within my own industry. But I'd also like to consider it a send-off that I won't be pigeonholed into myopic belief of what fashion should be. So yeah, I think we should move on to my collection now. So my process began with—
about 2 minutes left, just to give you a timing warning.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about the mood board real quick. I really tried to incorporate those elements of protection and love into this, and as well as my choice of fabrics. These are my initial sketches that I have done for Metatron as well. Let you take a look for a second. And then I began with prototyping, really. Sewing up sample garments, doing patterns, drapings, more additional prototyping, sample garments, patterns. And to the right, you will see a finished garment as well. And this is the final illustration that I came up with for my senior thesis. And for the next slide, I'm going to show you production. I had a seamster help me to make this dress. So you will see sewing, prototypes, some actual pinning of the garments. And it's being made into a film to showcase all of the little details that really went into this dress. That is my model, Savannah Polanco, who I think is amazing. In the bottom left-hand corner, I'm sorry, the bottom right-hand corner, you will see the crew that I assembled for this project. And here is a GIF of Savannah moving in the garment, as well as a video clip of Savannah posing for said film. And that's all I have for you guys. I want to give a special acknowledgement to Shalini, Sean Levon Nash, my models, Savannah Polanco, Claudia Mercon and Gabrielle Laguet for helping with the film portion, and also to my dog who helped me really understand what my senior thesis was actually about. So thank you.
Jordan, thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Great presentation. And let's see, we have 2 respondents in. Trena, do you mind kicking us off with your comments?
Sure. Wow, there's so much that you presented. The whole lineage of how you got to where you were, and how you kind of returned back to this idea of the winged creature or the wings. It's just such a lovely journey you took us on. Thank you so much, Jordan. I really appreciate your vulnerability and openness in your presentation. I think it's really interesting. I find this myself as an artist, where you have to struggle to kind of fit into some, some place, some box, some disciplinary practice. And I really appreciate and admire your strength to really step outside of those boxes and carve your own pathway. And but also that you really have stuck to the process and the practice of fashion, of construction of garments and sewing. And I'm thinking a lot about, as you were talking about, the idea of fashion and clothing and how it holds us, it wraps us. It is a very personal thing, no matter who you are. It has to do with choice, identity, and representational choice. And I'm wondering, I think I'm wondering a little bit about your own, how you think about clothing on your own body as well. And then, because the final piece you showed us was really, I was thinking about this idea of it's fantastical. It's like you've given this creature a kind of winged kind of appearance, and almost as though she could lift off and actually fly. And I think it was really beautiful to see that. But it also created like a lightness out of something that's really heavy on your heart. And and it made me feel curious about how you think about fashion and clothes as part of your own persona and how you wear them. Excuse me. Can you talk a little bit about that kind of personalized aspect of it?
Yes. Well, to be completely honest, I'm sorry, are you like how I personally dress, or
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like fashion, you as a designer, I mean, I'm not a fashion designer, so, but as a designer, I can imagine that you, excuse me, I'm having a trouble talking too, that you're creating some kind of vision for someone else to wear. But is that a vision that you also see yourself in physically?
Oh, I see. Thank you for that question. I would say that what I make is more of a reflection of my inner self. That's kind of strange for me to say, to be completely honest. I've personally, I feel like I've grown a lot this semester, and vulnerability is something that's still quite new to me. But yeah, I would say that it's more a reflection of who I am on the inside, and less about really about how I portray myself. I think in a way I'm communicating with people who I am without words. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, because I feel like you have this really amazing imaginary presence. It's almost like, I could crawl into your head a little bit just by seeing the things that you create. And it makes me think, like, I'm just very curious about what more is in there and how you physically see yourself in that space. It's just maybe it's a rhetorical question that you can't really answer, but it's a curious thought that I have. Yeah.
Thank you.
Leandra, do you want to bring some thoughts to the table?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for that presentation, Jordan. I really love how you work around your practice of fashion, and even in your earlier works, the way that you use the format to tell these other narratives, these very personal narratives. I think that's always so engaging, coming from outside the discipline and sort of seeing how you use all of the, technical skills of it. I think it's super interesting. And I think sort of reversing that and using that to tell your story and to create these narratives that are outside of the commercial aspect of it, I think is really compelling. When you started your presentation, you mentioned that you grew up in San Jose during the .com boom, and I noticed that you use digital illustration and in the way that it shows the draping and the sort of organic lines of your final designs, I think is really beautiful. I was just wondering what do you feel like the role of digital technology and digital illustration has in your practice now?
That's a very tough question to answer. I think that technology, personally speaking, from my industry, and in a way, it sort of complicates things as far as being a craftsman is concerned. For example, if we look at the idea of beading, there's a machine that does that now. So it puts people out of work. As far as digital illustration is concerned, it's a method that really works for me because I don't have a steady hand, which is, to be completely honest, it's kind of one of my biggest downfalls as a designer. It's a skill that I don't possess quite keenly, but technology has helped me to remedy that issue. I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly. I'm sorry. Can you help me out here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I was just wondering because the lines in the forms that you're creating are really beautiful, and I come from an architectural background, and that type of form is usually associated with digital fabrication to me. And your work really reminded me of like Neri Oxman's work. I don't know if you know her, but on your mood board, you had an image of a statue with like moss growing on it. And something about your work and the sort of stories that you're creating, to me, feel really rooted in like a place and a time. Like these are sort of mythic figures. And so I guess that that tension, I think, is very interesting between sort of like cleanliness of digital illustration and then the sort of age-old stories and that this sort of narrative that you're creating.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's interesting. They also remind me, I think Allison or somebody put in there this idea of metaphor. And I think that winged idea that you brought up in the beginning is like this powerful metaphor that's kind of being brought through, but it's also very much like a sail. I was thinking about, Leandra, when you were talking about the architectural elements, and I was thinking, wondering if what would be in the natural world that would have that sort of line. And I mean, I don't know if anything in the natural world has that really specific hard edge line, but I thought also about just being near the water and all the sails that we see all the time, and thinking about how things kind of influence you and creep into your subconscious from things that you might see every day or pass on your way that really start to show up somehow in your practice. And maybe you don't even have a relationship, a conscious relationship with them, but yeah. It's interesting to think about those ideas, where things come from.
Trena and Leandra, thank you so much for these very, very thoughtful comments. And Jordan, again, thank you for sharing your work with us today. We can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah, thank you. It was really fantastic.
Thank you, Jordan.
I also, and congratulations. I also wanted to reiterate to everyone, just again, that you are more than welcome and highly encouraged to put your comments and ideas into the chat. And we're seeing some great ones in here so far, and they absolutely can become part of the conversation for Leandra and Trena. So thank you for everyone who's using it, and I encourage you to do so if you haven't had the chance yet. Our second presenter will be Michael, who's a ceramics major, and I have the pleasure of having him in my class this semester. And one thing I wanted to speak to is that Michael is a really great student to have because he's so curious, and you'll see that in the work that he's about to show. He's very curious, not only in his approach and the research, but the materials he's using and how he's using them, both materials such as clay, but then also working digitally because of the time of COVID. So Michael, please, we're welcome, and we're looking forward to seeing your presentation.
Thank you, Khafre, for that flattering introduction. All right, hello everybody. To make a very long story more or less short and more manageable, I have pre-recorded my presentation, so I'm here, and you just get to listen to my voice. So, without further ado, here we go.
And I am a ceramics major. I transferred to CCA from a school in Portland, Oregon, where I studied sculpture. After Portland, I decided to start as an industrial design major at CCA. During my semesters of industrial design, I got really into material science, and after taking a glass class, I realized that I wanted to find a way to incorporate glass and ceramics together. Now that I am in ceramics, my focus is about learning from history and using symbols from the Bronze Age to represent my ideas. All of my work is a reflection of our current selves and society through the use of form and research of curiosities from the Bronze Age. These concepts inspire me to explore objects of interpretation throughout history. Just as archaeology identifies artifacts from the Bronze Age, my sculptures are inscribed with witness marks that are linked to technologies of our current era. In the current age we live in, art is mainly propaganda, and we are all subject to subconscious persuasion. Ceramics are known to be steadfast and have a long relationship with time. Because of this, we may learn from them and discover stories from cultures long gone. As we stride into the murky future, silicates and ceramics are undoubtedly the future of materials. My work explores and crystallizes representations of our current era through the study of bygone eras. These stories are, in my opinion, 3 examples of a large part of the world's mythic structure. If you want to study history as it relates to mythic structures, you need to study these texts. This is about the idea that history can turn into myth and then be lost. The ethereal word-of-mouth oral tradition of myth far outlasts the half-life of symbolic objects. These books are written by a variety of different authors, ranging from MIT professors to pop cultural phenomenon writers to Egyptologists. They are all related to the progression of history. Art and history seem to be tied together. History is very complex and inherently obscure due to the nature of documentation, political tampering throughout history, such as the burning of the library at Alexandria, and other cultural purges in the name of monotheism, imperialism, and subcategorization. This work is a reflection of the self being non-static and growing as a person in this current era. For this piece, I was influenced by dialectical synthesis and scientific attitudes towards research. The double helix is a visual metaphor for the progression of perspective, where you have 2 opposing thoughts, a thesis and an antithesis, that wrestle with each other until some form of clarity appears. This piece takes the form of developing a neutral stance between both sides. Here is the Bronze Age influence. This piece is a reflection of surveillance capitalism and how it will be our undoing. Influenced by Bronze Age Triskelion petroglyphs, the eye is based on the geometric shape of the sacred almond, which is the idea of a vessel holding some type of obscured knowledge. Suspended and supported by stoneware vertebrae and skulls, this piece is an homage to HAL 9000 from Stanley Kubrick's 2001 Space Odyssey. These are more examples of symbols and visual representations of complex historical ideas. These tablets are a reflection of environmental preservation and dualistic structures of morality. These are influenced by Arthurian symbolic structures. This is my most successful metaphor as visual narrative and leads me into what my current work is and the inspiration for this piece. I am inspired by Aberdeen Shire stone carved balls and curiosities from the Bronze Age. Some of my own work includes ceramic balls that carry logos of large multinational companies on them to highlight the driving mechanisms in our culture and point out the historically expected societal collapse and restart. If these companies were to disappear or in some way collapse, society as a whole would change entirely. These are some early prototypes of the Aberdeen Shire inspired balls. This piece is made of red Hawaiian clay that is unfired. Made with constant widths, the shape of these objects only allows them to roll in a circle. The clay is varnished, which is an early way of sealing and making objects waterproof. Much like how no one really knows what the Bronze Age curiosities are for or why they were made, I am reflecting on our current society and multinational companies that have become the witness marks of our era. Using 3D modeling, I have taken symbols of our current society to represent our era in place of what would be seen on a Bronze Age curiosity. This form is inspired by the Aberdeen Shire stone carved balls. I have made spheres that carry the logos of large multinational companies on them to highlight the driving mechanisms in our culture and point out the historically expected societal collapse and restart. We have not seen the full repercussions of what these companies are doing or why. This parallels with the Bronze Age objects. These are Bronze era carving tools that created the marks on the Aberdeen Shire stone carved balls. This then leads to my next piece. One of the more nuanced problems with displaying our current age is that it exists on an ethereal substructure, like the internet. The Bronze Age shows witness marks from the tools that were used to show us physically on an object what the past was like. Now everything is digital. So how do we preserve our witness marks? This piece is a theoretical rendering of something that is only able to be made using algorithms. I am inscribing this age's technological hinge through the use of 3D programs. And finally, this is the inspiration to my final piece, a true curiosity found in Iran and is made, or at least is dated to be somewhere around the Bronze Age. This piece is a critique on institutional failures during this pandemic. This is a self-reflection of our society. An incredibly greedy, self-obsessed goose sitting atop a cube that represents overly simplistic linear thought and prioritizing financial security over intellectual security and the safety of others. All of my work is a representation of a reflection, looking into ourselves and opening a space for thought. This is inspired by the Bronze Age curiosities and encapsulates our current society during this important moment in history. Finally, thank you all. Thank you to everyone who's helped me throughout this process, and a special thanks to CCA.
Excellent. Michael, thank you for sharing that with us. Looks good. So let's see, Leandra, do you mind beginning with your comments this time?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much, Michael. That was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you.
I really love how you have just totally embraced this language and are using it to explore so many different themes about about society at large. I think that having like a narrow filter to paint such large pictures of such large subjects, I think, is really successful. So congratulations on that. I was wondering if you could speak for just a moment about the title of the piece, Oikosphere, and how that relates to the sort of brands that you've selected to include.
Of course. So oikos often refers to a hearth or a fire, which is kind of synonymous with the home or creating a home. So I thought it would be appropriate to, I guess, refer to the industries that drive our culture as kind of the home sphere, or the sphere in which we, I guess, operate in our, I guess, society, which is in a way our home. So that was generally the thought behind the titling of Oikosphere, if that answers the question.
Yes, thank you. That's fascinating. It also brings to mind to me the way that brands are interconnected. The way that, when someone says like, oh, I'm not drinking Coke anymore, I'm gonna drink Mountain Dew, and it's like owned by the same person or something like that. That the sort of branching of everything, despite the individual sort of I guess brands, the sort of ethos of each name sort of ties together behind the scenes. So I think that really speaks to so many things. And I know that, it's production this year is very, is totally different with different limited access to things. But I was wondering what material you were considering for the digital fabrications, or did I understand that right, that the digital models are meant to be produced as physical objects? Yes,
that is a great question. I can clarify that. So one of the problems, as I referred to in my presentation, with I guess archiving and saving media in our current age, is that it's all digital, it's all digitized and stored in a cloud. So the whole contextualizing of me not making a physical piece, which is what I will be doing, is leaving it as digital, is to try to point out a parallel by physical objects are usually archived in a soil matrix, or like some type of dirt, or they're deliberately buried. So I wanted to make the association with the fact that in our day and age, we have this kind of weird thing called the cloud, right? So it's this, I guess our era has this defining factor that is, we can store things and I guess view them in a completely new and I guess abstract to a certain degree way. So I wanted to make it basically only digital, to point out the fact that that is the age we're living in.
fantastic, thank you. That's super interesting. If you were to present that in a gallery, how do you think you would represent that sort of like digital field that these objects are in?
That's a great question. So originally I was going to get on the NFT fan wagon and try to basically create a bunch of digital objects that would then be tied into a cryptocurrency, but is a little bit too much of a bite to chew. So I decided that it would be okay just to, I guess, refer to the, I guess, the, I got the fact that the piece will be, I guess, permanently digital. But I mean, to answer your question more fully, I would basically put them on TV monitors and have them, I guess, spinning digitally. So yes, TV monitors and things like that to simplify things.
Excellent. Oh, I would love to see that sort of on display with the sort of physical works that you also produce. I think that would be so interesting. Thank you. Trena, I'll hand it over to you.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, I was really impressed with your library too in the beginning of your presentation. And I don't know if you know this book, but there's a book called What is Art For by Ellen Dissanayake. Do you know that book?
I do not.
Okay,
I'll
I'm
look it up,
going
though.
to chat for you, but basically she goes back to the beginning of time and she argues that art is central to the emergence and the adaptive survival of the human species. And she goes into detail about all kinds of things, how even art kind of evolved as a human tool and process and need. And it came to mind as I was listening to you and looking at your book collection. So I'll put it in the chat for you. It might be interesting for you to pick that one up. You know, the interesting thing about the moving, I love, first of all, I love what you're doing, and I love the historical research you did. And you know, a couple things that came to mind were like the idea of witness, and you know, all the historical Bronze Age things had their symbols and marks. And did you research, because you know, we're looking at your contemporary version of that in these digital drawings with, you know, Volkswagen and Microsoft symbols. We know what those are in our culture. Like everybody sees them and they know what they are. And I'm wondering if you did any research into the historical symbols that were on these ancient bronze and what they meant to the people of that day.
So to clarify your question was my research on the Bronze Age equivalent symbols?
Yes.
And what they meant to the society?
Yeah.
That's a great question. It is very hard to say because the cultures that existed at that time were, I guess, migrational. So it's very difficult and very obscure to actually determine the exact interpretation of what the symbols could mean. But as far as my research goes, a lot of the Triskelions referred to the infinity and the idea of, I guess, a life as cyclical and this, I guess, infinite, or I guess in an abstract way, the idea of reincarnation, or I guess some type of continuation. But it's all very abstract and up to interpretation, which is one of the things I love about archaeology and I guess studying objects from the past, is that really no one can say for sure because there isn't anyone who's a witness or like someone who can double check or have an alibi. So it's very obscure, and I guess you'd have to then look at the progression of the culture, or the cultures that used to be the cultures that made those objects and where they are now. So it's definitely a very good question.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, you know, we also live in a migratory society, a highly migratory society, yet we are a global society. And so everyone knows those symbols. So it's just interesting to think about that difference. But the other thing that came to mind for me was when you made your clay pieces, that idea of witness is the mark of the hand on the material. And in the digital pieces, which I find are really interesting and fascinating, that mark goes away. So the witness becomes a different kind of thing. And I don't know, this is not really a question, but I'm just wondering how you feel about that. That loss of your own hand, the mark of your own hand on that.
That is a great question. I really like the idea of, I guess, our time, or at least our perception of our own impact on society, being much less profound than we actually take it to be. So I think it's more of an exercise in letting go of what we perceive as what is going to be our, what we'll leave behind. So even if we, I guess, lose all of these digital files, it kind of goes in hand with most of the things that have existed on, I guess, in our geographical timescale, in the sense that there are hundreds of cultures that we don't know about that have existed, but will never, I guess, be, there's not enough evidence to prove that they did exist or the extent that it existed. So I guess to answer the question of how I feel about losing myself in the process, or at least losing the idea of an artist that has to be kind of the generator of a specific piece. I think it's okay. I think it's okay that I'm not a part of it, because it's not about me. It's about the culture that I'm preserving. So
I have just one last quick comment. I don't know if you know this, but early circuit boards were made out of ceramic. Actually, they were made out of like really fine porcelain. And when I was looking at your work and kind of where it went, that just popped into my mind, and it might be something fun for you to look into and think about as well.
definitely.
Trena, Leandra, thank you so much for these comments. I think we could talk for every presenter, we could talk forever. There's such exciting things being brought up, and ceramics, Trena, is everywhere. So yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. Michael, thank you so much for your great presentation. And everyone, I think, Trena, you had mentioned a few resources. Please post those in the chat. I was fascinated and can't wait to look them up. And everyone else, of course, we can be putting resources in the chat as well for Michael and the other presenters to look at. Michael, thanks again.
Thank you all.
Good job. Okay, so now we are going to transition to Keston, and Brian is Keston's teacher. Brian, would you mind introducing the next presenter?
Yes. Hi, everybody. What a nice occasion this is for all of us to be able to get together like this, especially during the pandemic. My name is Brian Conley, and I teach in the sculpture and SICA undergraduate program. I also teach in the graduate fine art program. Keston Hinds Cruz is an experimental graphic designer born and raised in Orlando, Florida, and currently residing in San Francisco. He is focused on immersive experiences using augmented reality software, vector applications, found imagery, and writing. So I'd like to introduce Keston.
Thank you for the introduction, Brian. Hello, everyone. My name is Keston, and I'll be talking about my senior thesis project titled Placeholder.mp4. In my graphic design thesis class, we all had to develop a semester-long project using the word fact. Using this word, I created this thesis statement. Our pre-pandemic social facts of life have been altered because we are now living in a primarily virtual space. So 2 questions I asked myself while developing this project were, how would society be different if we didn't have technology during the pandemic? Primarily thinking about how it would feel to be completely barred from seeing human faces and physical interaction while in quarantine. The second question I asked myself was how, oh, sorry. Oh, my bad.
And Keston, we're seeing some gray boxes on top of your presentation. Can you maybe minimize, it's probably the Zoom chat window, so that we can read everything? Yeah, exactly where you're pointing.
I think that's the, like, did it move?
It did.
Okay, is it like small now, or?
It is smaller, it's not blocking the text anymore.
Okay, I think that's like the camera. Okay, so should I just keep going?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, awesome. So the other question I asked myself was, how has technology affected us while we are in the pandemic? I was thinking about how differently we exist in the world now that we are interacting more with each other on screens rather than in person. For example, for me, I tend to think twice now when I hold the door for a person I don't know, and I tend to stop walking to let other people walk by when I feel like they're too close. After thinking about these two questions, I decided to create a project that was a tour of a computer desktop in the form of a website that talks about how the pandemic has made us heavily reliant on screens for interaction. I thought this would be a great way to critique the pandemic and our reliance on technology while using a space everyone is somewhat familiar with. The mediums I used for this project were an iPad, an iPad 3D scanner app, Figma, which is a website mockup app, and Illustrator, where I made all of the graphics for the project. I created some imagery that helped in the development of the website. For this first piece of imagery, I was really focused on comparing people and where they live as boxes in space that can't really interact with each other. These next two pieces of imagery were me playing around with the concept of virtual space and how that would take different forms. Again, I utilized the cube symbol as a way to emphasize the fact that we are confined in space rather than living in it. I also used Zoom as a form of inspiration. As a student, Zoom is the primary form of human interaction that I receive on a daily basis. This is how I utilize the 3D scanner app in order to develop imagery for my website. And this was me playing around with the scanner while using it in a bathroom with multiple mirrors. It created an interesting effect where it would scan the world beyond the mirror, effectively transforming it into an actual space. Here are my initial mock-ups when I was thinking about how to create the web experience for the user. And lastly, here's a trailer that I developed for you all to see that showcases how it would look like to navigate this virtual space. Okay, well, that's it. Oh, sorry. Also, just wanted to say thank you to my friends and family who have supported me throughout my time at CCA. Thank you.
Keston, thank you so much for sharing that piece with us. What a pleasure to watch, and obviously thought-provoking on many levels. So let's see, Trena, do you mind kicking us off? And just
Sure.
a time note, we have until 6:15.
Okay. Wow, that was pretty amazing. You know, one of the things that you had in your writing was doing things that are unimaginable, and it just harkens to me of this sci-fi world that we see all the time that's getting more and more sophisticated in movies and all these, and books and literature, and the ways it's getting delivered to us, and and how it's really igniting our imaginations towards things that we never felt possible. And now we are been stuck for a year in this like isolation zone where we're forced to be, you know, to really interface with technology all the time. And it reminds me of like this VR world, and you know, how we might be heading into that space where we're just always detached from our physical reality. One of the things that I've been thinking about a lot just sitting on Zoom is like, I don't even know where my feet are. You know, I'm so detached from half of my body. And it's kind of interesting to be thinking and noticing that. So I just, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's really interesting and really compelling. And this idea of deleting humanity. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and how you feel, you know, where'd that come from and how do you feel? I mean, I guess I know where it came from, but how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really feel too great about it, but I guess it was just me, like, you know, like now that like vaccines are coming out, but like there's also like new COVID strands happening as well. And just like thinking about how long are we going to be in this predicament where we have to just keep like rebooting as like a society, and kind of just like thinking about how long is this going to last. So that kind of like patch 2.0 was like, oh, there's a vaccine, so maybe things are going to be okay, but it's kind of like potentially this like never ending experience that we are currently in right now.
It's like we control it, but we can't control it. What's it doing to our eyes? How's it helping us? How's it changing the way we see color? These are all the questions I have. I'm going to hand it over to my partner here, but I just want to say one more thing. Do you know who Jaron Lanier is?
No.
He's one of the guys long ago that helped develop virtual reality for the military. And he lives in Berkeley. He's a really interesting guy. I've seen him talk a couple times. He has a bunch of books out, but you should read him, I think. I'll put it in the chat for you. It'd be really interesting to check him out. Yeah. But Leandra, because we have just a few minutes, I'm going to hand it back over to you. Yes. Thank you so much. It was really interesting.
Thank you, Trena. Thank you, Keston. Fantastic presentation. The way you put that into a film was so engaging, and it's very obvious that you are a skilled graphic designer. And there's so many things that I could say about that, but with limited time, I wanted to ask you, do you know forensic architecture?
No.
A.L. Weissman. So they are a collective of architects as well as other forms of designers, technologists, but they reconstruct sort of moments of geopolitical conflict using different kinds of narratives, but through sort of this digital restructuring. And there's an essay that I will link for you in the chat, but there was one project where they reconstructed it's a torture site, but that they, in talking about it with the victims, they were able to work with psychologists to go through this trauma response that was formed through what they refer to as the egocentric and allocentric perspectives and the way that trauma sort of makes the two diverge and collide, egocentric being your view from eye level, and then allocentric being the view from the outside. And your project engages with this in such an interesting way about the present moment. And I love that, you know, you use surveillance to observe, you know, our personal condition that we're so disassociated from. And in that way, you're sort of, you know, using it for, in this way of trying to figure out, you know, what you're experiencing. And I think that's super powerful. And I also love the way that, you know, you are able to use this technology to sort of create spaces beyond what's real and what's observable also, you know, really sort of complicating this notion that, you know, we'll be able to really truly understand, you know, what happened in this time and the difficulty of really trying to capture the experience of the moment, which we know will be historic and we'll be talking about for the rest of our lives. So I really love that. And thank you. That's all the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is really honestly just the beginning of what's going to happen to us in relationship to technology. And so it's just a really powerful, just to put us as a viewer in that place, to really be thinking about that as a reflective, like, you know, your piece is kind of like a reflective tool for me in a way. And it was just very like aesthetically and beautifully put together, and it kind of terrified me, honestly. So so, you know, that was a good reaction to get.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for your comments, and yeah, Keston, thank you for scaring us. It was really good to see.
You're welcome.
And I'm afraid to touch my computer right now, so good work.
Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. Let's see, next up we have Ethan, and I have the pleasure of teaching Ethan this semester, and I guess I just wanted to say that Ethan is a very thoughtful student and has sort of a energy that's both positive and inquisitive, and does a really nice job of pushing past the awkwardness of Zoom. So he is always a bright light in our course. And Ethan, I very much look forward to meeting you in person someday. I think that'll be a nice treat for us. So please, whenever you're ready, share your presentation.
Can you hear me? I was unmuted there. Let me share my screen here. And I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who's here. Congratulations to all my peers and in making it this far, and got some good presentations so far. My name is Ethan Schoefer, and I am a graduating individualized major. I'm going to read my artist statement, so I invite you to close your eyes for a second. Magic is made when I bend dreams to my will, creating illusory drawings, designs, and short animations. Dreams expose our innermost queries, blurring memories with fantasies yet to be realized. My work explores conflicts in these dream worlds through various dualities, light and dark, natural and built spaces, nature and technology. Rooted in Aubrey Beardsley's symbolist illustration and mid-century graphic design, my work weaves together such diverse elements as Mesoamerican culture, as well as psychedelic poster art. Through my work, I explore colors, patterns, textures, and the many ways they extract shared expressions of mystery and surprise between artist and audience. By combining the tactility of hands-on work with the precision of digital making, I find that same mystery and surprise within myself. Exploring the spaces beyond my comfort zone creates a subversive yet playful quality in my work. I find as much joy simply in creating work as in seeing how people respond to it. My studio is both my workshop and my laboratory, a proving grounds for new ideas and visual experiments. consistent work and practice are key to both achieving my own dreams while inspiring new ones in others. If you have your eyes closed, you can open them now. So going into my body of work, I have two, maybe three primary influences. The first being the 1964 World's Fair held in New York. I appreciate it for its sense of immersion in environmental storytelling, its stylized architecture, bringing all these cultures together. Secondly, as I mentioned in my statement, I'm very much influenced by my own Mexican heritage and Mexican history in general, but more specifically, Mesoamerican culture and history. I think it's fascinating to explore all these, indigenous cultures that are sadly gone. I guess the monuments and the people, though, are still around. And I look very much forward to visiting a place like this, Teotihuacan, Mexico, in person. As for my own journey, when I started out here at CCA, I was a graphic design major. And I've always been interested in design and poster art, especially in illustration. I had the great opportunity to learn screen printing my freshman year, and I made this poster of a girl floating through space. And in thinking about space, I'm also thinking about environments and environmental storytelling. In my second year, I made these flags. I took a concept as big as the place of Disneyland, and I wanted to communicate the space and the environment of Disney through simple colors and textures. And I wasn't quite satisfied with being in graphic design, as I wanted to get more hands-on and also a little more abstract and expressive in my work. And so I leaned more into my historical influences. Mesoamerica again. I made this screen print where I depicted the common motif of the feathered serpent. And as I moved through my work, I began to get more abstract, and I didn't want to be as representational with my work, as in I didn't want to just simply represent icons and motifs of Mesoamerican culture. With respect to the cultures, I wanted to bring together something new. So inspired by science fiction, I created these variations of sci-fi Mesoamerican design. And then something kind of clicked for me where I felt like I kind of found my own voice a little more in pushing illustration and these very graphic qualities. And over the summer, I had a lot of time to work and make drawings and really explore my own voice. So I made this small but very expressive and detailed pen and ink illustration. And this is really where I felt comfortable in depicting all these different influences together and trying to be, abstract in what I show, and also just really pushing all the ways I can combine materials. It's almost like a collage. I very much enjoy collage making. And for this illustration piece, this is actually going to be the cover for the literary magazine of CCA, Humble Pie, and I had the great opportunity to make the cover for that, as well as help promote the senior reading that we were going to be having this Wednesday. And then I started thinking about illustration differently, besides putting pen and ink to paper or creating something digitally. I wanted to lean more into paper making and very hands-on kind of crafting. And I explored making this small book, prototype book of just cut designs and illustrations in here. And that really influenced my thesis, which I'm working on developing another book. It's a carousel book. I wish I could show you what a carousel book is, but it's not finished yet. It'll be finished next week. And just really taking all these things that I've explored, the playful qualities of Disney, the geometric patterns of Mesoamerica, and kind of the folk art of Mexico. This was very much inspired by like Mexican papel picado, which is, you see them in, I don't know, if you go to Mexico, you see them in Mexican markets, just paper cut illustrations. And thinking about also how I can try to communicate a sense of space and an environment through these different paper and hand-cut illustrations. And also really wanting to make my work bright and fun and enjoyable, because for me, sounds cheesy, but art is like food for the soul for me. I mean, I get so deep into my work, and so I try to be really detailed and just explore all different kinds of materials, while also trying to kind of explore my imagination. And so with that, I'll say, once this is finished, moving forward, I actually want to keep pushing that even further. And I want to create the pages that I've been making for my book and just scale them up, go even bigger. A common suggestion that I've gotten over the years is to work bigger, keep pushing it, go all the way. And that's really what I'm looking at for the future. So thank you for listening, and I'll stop sharing now and invite some questions and conversation over what I've listened to. Thank you.
Ethan, thank you so much for sharing that work with us. It looks really good. And let's see, Leandra, do you mind beginning our conversation?
Definitely. Thank you, Ethan. Beautiful work, so intricate, and I wish so much I could see it in person, because I can just imagine how beautiful the texture of the paper and the layering would be in person. And also how the light and the colors would play off of each other. So definitely looking forward to your completion of the book and the development of the work moving forward. I love the idea of you trying to go into bigger scales, particularly in the way that you talk about space and the environment in your work. There's something very, hypnotic about the layers of imagery that you're putting together. And to me, it really sort of is very transporting, and really connects to memory, but also like the emotion that's tied to memory. So not just, the recreation of a place or a monument, but really how you feel, how you felt about that place, almost in the way that like scent sort of is tied to memory. That's how the imagery that you're working with really feels to me. And I was wondering, you said that you can't show us what the gateway or what the carousel book looks like, but is when it's bound, what sort of like movement is going to be available to these pages? Are they sort of tied together in the sort of layers that you're presenting, or is there a sort of like ambiguity as to which of the pages are sort of grouped together?
I think it'll actually be very clear, sort of the way you navigate the book, because the book will be created. Gosh, I'm terrible at describing things. It'll be a book in the round, sort of. So you'll see the pages, and they'll be cut into triangular sections, and these triangles are then formed into one kind of round book. And you can go around the book and see each scene as if it were a carousel. That's why it's called a carousel
how
book.
interesting.
The movement, I like that question of movement, because on top of going, left and right, going around the book to see it, I'm very much thinking forward and backward. And of course, I took these pictures and the illustration kind of flat. But once I assemble the book, there's definitely going to be a sense of space and depth going forward into the book. So I know that wasn't super clear because it's not finished, but I'm definitely thinking about how I can really pull you into the work besides like just the colors and layering. Yeah, if that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. How engaging, and also, yeah, that spatial engagement. Is there a specific like narrative also that the book is constructing?
Yeah, I guess I didn't touch on that. And I'll just take a brief detour and say part of what inspired me was actually this. I checked out a book from the library on cities in the round, just simply circular cities that are constructed, very geometrically and symmetrically. And I was thinking about, well, if I can communicate space through the book, why not try to communicate scenes of the city, a fictional, surreal city? So the first one, Gateway, will be the first page, the first scene, and it's literally going to be the gate of the city. And as you're moving through, it communicates, and it's showing different scenes, the palace in the city, the kind of underground caves, the laboratory, all these kind of fantastical, surreal, playful places. So when it's completed, I hope it'll be more clear.
Oh, fantastic. I love that idea of sort of all of these different cities coming together around the motif of the round. That's also in the book. That sort of brings to mind like Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities. It's a book of stories about different cities, and the sort of, I guess, spoiler alert, that in the end there's sort of all the same city, and it's about how everyone's experience of a place is so different. So I think that's really fascinating. Trena, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, thank you. Wow, the description of your book sounds really. First of all, I think your work is so beautiful, and it looks so beautifully constructed as well. And the description of the book sounds amazing. When you had talked about, first of all, I want to say thank you for asking us to close our eyes. It's rare that you're in a computer screen setting where people actually ask you to close your eyes to participate. So thank you. That was really delightful. But when you talk about going bigger, when I saw your paper cuts and stuff, I just immediately imagined these portals that you walk through, like you said, gates. I could just really physically see that as an experiential thing where you're walking through these portals that are framed by your by your designs somehow. And I really love the idea of this kind of nostalgic, kind of memory-based thinking that I think, Leandra, you brought up. And it made me think about this way that we have these ancestral hauntings. And even though we might not have been there, we don't know much about it, it's something that is just intuitive in us, that just follows us everywhere. And I love how you're like playing that out with such like rigor and experimentation. So it's really wonderful. It made me think about also this idea of a kaleidoscope. And I wondered what would happen if some of your designs became that. And then it made me think about animation. And I wondered if you had thought about animation as a potential form at some point as well for this work.
I'm so glad you mentioned animation. At the last second, actually, I cut out animation from this presentation simply because I didn't think it was gonna like hold up through Zoom. But it will be on my online gallery if you take a look at it. I will mention at the end of last semester, I made a paper cut animation. Very short, but I've really been wanting to explore that, and motion graphics, bringing things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really, really wonderful. Yeah, and the cities in the round kind of idea too is, I think, just a really interesting. It's an interesting phenomena in space. If you've walked around a round city, and the idea of the circle as a symbol is so powerful for us, for us as humans. So really, really looking forward to seeing it at some point somewhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for all your comments and everyone in the chat. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. And Ethan, thank you again for sharing with us. It was good to see the work. Ethan did mention the BFA Showcase, which is work by the graduating seniors. And I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat so you can see it if you haven't had a chance to do so already. And Aamirah is next. And also, Aamirah, it looks like you're the first one in the showcase too, so that's exciting. Aamirah has Brian as a teacher, and Brian, do you mind introducing her?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to introduce Aamirah. Aamirah Khafre is an interdisciplinary artist focusing on printmaking, graphic design, textiles. She graduated from the Charter High School for Architecture and Design and worked at the Fabric Workshop and Museum, as well as a Brandywine Workshop and Archives in Philadelphia. Aamirah, your presentation?
I'm overwhelmed with the reactions already in the comments. Thanks so much. I'm gonna just tap right in. Thanks for being here, everybody. Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm AK Aamirah Khafre. I'm a fine artist, entrepreneur, and event curator. Can y'all see my screen? Did I share it? Do you see it?
Not yet.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Okay, perfect. Okay. Hi, y'all. I'm AK Aamirah Khafre, fine artist, entrepreneur, and event curator. I decided to be a fine artist in about 6th grade. And so with that knowledge, I took myself very seriously and decided to go to art high school. And while I was in art high school, I experienced my first fine arts paid internship. And from there, I continued my education at CCA here now. While I've been at CCA, I've changed my major 4 times, and I'm super proud of that journey. And so the third picture is an example of that. When I discovered how I could cultivate all of the things that I wanted to be creating in my one essence through the individualized program. And since then, I've just had an extremely abundant and intimate relationship with being here at CCA. When I was in 12th grade, I had came across this quote that said, "Art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable," which was a really pivotal moment for me because I had to acknowledge to some extent I was a bit disturbed. And so that was very eye-opening and abundant for me. And so through middle school and high school, I had been depicting this very ominous like silhouette of a feminine being, but never really resonated with it. I feel like in my upbringing, I was kind of in a very escapist like being. And so being a Black Muslim woman artist from North Philadelphia, my identity was such a completely new and foreign nuance. And so I found home in the word fantasy. And I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I created a brand called AK Fantasy, and our slogan was Embrace. But over time, as I started to learn to be more present, the term and acknowledgement of myself as a fantasy was no longer serving me. And so I started referencing back to reflection of myself and like these very real essence of my being that wasn't necessarily visible or tangible, but very real in my experiences. And so I started playing with language and research about within metaphysics, looking into what spirit and the soul and what the differences was of those things, what success and happiness was as an American, as a maker. And so I really started honing in on language. And so with that, it came a study of body language and interpretation of that, and also words of affirmation. And I just really started being a lot more intimate with my work and my perception and my language and the history of it and the future of it. And so from that, early on in the beginning of my college career, the word perception had been presented to me and the concepts of it. And so it had really opened me up to a new essence of being and existing and creating as a whole. And so I wanted to share this. And so I decided to create a design intervention, which is called Post Perception. And here in my logo, I referenced back to a piece that I made back in 11th grade when I was studying the design principles. Around that time, I had my brother and my dad have passed away within a month span of time apart from each other. And I felt very fragile and wanted to express like this emptiness, this kind of discarding of my body and my heart as a spirit. And so little did I know, like translating this will come back into fruition of like how to express myself later on. And so with post perception, I've been doing a lot of contemplating on how I could bridge my fine art practice while also bridging in very tangible works, expressive works, shared works, because I only understood myself to be able to reach a quality of success while sticking to my passion of fine art through the relationship of wearables, clothes, product, but really appreciated that abstract and that fine art practice and printmaking and things as such. And so over time, I've just been making and making. And my neighbor, John Dow, has said to me one day, make work that's so intimate that it becomes universal. And it was super relevant at this time because it gave me a freedom to start referencing myself when I make work for a more authentic and abundant conversation through my pieces conceptually. And I have made this piece with confidence in this newfound voice and relationship of myself. It's a 5'7" tall, me being 5'2" piece. And my professor and my friend and colleague had proposed to me that somehow, some way, potentially this figure could be me. And me struggling with vulnerability through life, it was hard for me to see that or accept it openly. But as quarantine has come into things, I did start really sitting with this figure and understanding that, you know, anything I create is it comes from me. So it's already me, a part of me to some extent. And I had a very isolated quarantine and I started posing questions to myself about the quality of my character. And so I created this work where I get to question, am I as soft as cotton? Am I as sticky and confused as glue? Am I as harmonious and fluid as marble? Am I as fake as plastic? Am I as callous as stainless steel? Or am I simply just burnt out from my life experiences? And a little while after that, through this introspective stage, I had the opportunity to paint a mural that was not pre-sketched on Haight and Ashbury. And this piece informed me, my subconscious self, let me know that I was going through a rebirth, a retransition. I was shedding something and building something up within myself and spirit. And through that, I started referencing back to my family and my home and this saying of it takes a village really being like a testimony to who I've become, who I am, where I am, and how I see the world and translate things. I think about my Umi, who is a woman, a very creative woman, who is the mother of 5 children, me being the youngest and her only girl. I think about my Abu and him passing when I was in 10th grade, and how he, as although I left 2,000 miles away from everything I knew, his essence and his spirit was something that informed me that I'm really never alone. And then thinking back on my parents in this foundation, I understood that my grandparents are also very parental in my life, as my grandma used to nourish me every day after school, and my pop-up used to host family meetings once a week, introducing us to the 11 laws of the Kemet, and just teaching me about the conversation of a higher self and lower self, and expanding these things, these concepts being foundational to who I am. And so with this village-like concept, I've gone on back to post-perception, thinking about how I could recultivate the community experience and essence during COVID, and invited the public to engage with each other using art and accessibility through my design skill, and placing this as a social project to see what could come out of it. And I'm super grateful because people have actually taken the time, a moment to share themselves with me, to express themselves. And as a neighbor, it is amazing to see that people care about something that came into fruition that was really anxious for me to even put myself out there to do, and see the many abundant ways that it could really impact someone or even invite someone into a conversation. And so with this amazing and exciting new approach of conversation and post-perception, I've decided that I started in San Francisco, but this is because that's where I currently reside. But I would love to go back to many places that I have personal relationships in, where I can cultivate conversations for the community, give them access to each other, and kind of reconstruct this dynamic of social engagement after this such detrimental impact of what COVID has done for us as people. And so I would just like to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of my loved ones, my parents, my family, my friends, my ancestors, my teachers, so much. My journey has been very, very long, being as though I've always known what I wanted to do. And there's a gajillion list of people to thank. And so I thank you all very, very much. And if you would like to collaborate with me, expand on conversation, or engage or support my work, you can reference me on in my email at softsoulshop@gmail.com, or you could go to my website. Also, you can go to my websites at AK Contributions, my fine arts practice, and then Post Perception is a brand and a lifestyle brand where you can purchase product to continue the conversation of perspective is everything with me, and allow me to continue to fund my work and support the brand. And just if you want to keep up with the conversations in my practice, you can follow me on social medias at AK Contributions and Post Perception. Once again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you all again. This means the world to me.
Aamirah, thank you so much. And also it's a personal pleasure to see how you've grown over the past couple of years. Wonderful presentation. Good work. Let's see, Trena, do you mind kicking us off with comments?
Yeah, thank you, Aamirah. Oh my God, that was so amazing. I just so admire your strength, your drive, your persistence, and the sheer beauty of your thinking is just really inspiring. And I was thinking about this idea of post-perception that you've created a practice, a process, and a living out of. So yay for you. You know, some of the words that came up was this idea of nourishing. You said that, I think, a couple times. And I think that this work is very nourishing. I mean, it's very evident that it's nourishing for you. This is what this practice is doing for you. It's really nourishing and feeding you and helping you to grow just as a human in the world. And I wondered if you could, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your community experience that you showed us. There's a little video of. Did you have large cutouts that people were, what was happening there? How did they make those things? How big were they? What was the process a little bit more?
So a part of my practice is graphic design. So I just created a 26 by 31 poster and then printed it and applied it onto a wooden panel and zip tied it to a gate in multiple locations of the community, and informed people who already follow post perception in the community to let them know that this is a thing out there that you can engage with, and something that really means a lot to me. And so I told them, you know, bring your art supplies. Some people brought fabric, some people brought crayons, some people brought pens and markers. So it was like really exciting. It was limitless with the materials. And so it just became more abundant.
Are they still up in different public places or no?
One of them is still up. I don't know if someone took one or it just flew off from the wind because it's SF, but one of them is still up at Jackson Playground right now. But don't worry, I will continue this project and continue to inform everyone on locations and how they can engage and participate in the project.
And I want to say, big shout out for the fabric workshop. When I got out of undergraduate school, that was my first job at the fabric workshop. I worked there. So I was so excited to hear that you had an experience there as well. I love that place. It's a phenomenal place.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing is just the kind of intimacy of your work and the recognition of allowing yourself to be put out there intimately. And sometimes, you know, it sounded like it was really just an intuitive process. And then at some point you recognize that. But it really does take a lot of courage and strength to name that and to just go with it. So, I mean, honestly, for a young artist to have gotten to that point is pretty amazing. And I really encourage you to keep going. It's really beautiful work. You know, I love that how you see yourself in it, and it is a reflection of you and all that you are. So, yeah, fantastic.
Thank you.
So I'm going to hand it over to Leandra so she can get a few words in as well.
Yes. Thank you, Aamirah. Wonderful presentation. I am just so filled with energy by all of your work. It's fantastic. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about an image in one of your slides in which two people are wearing garments that look like they're tied together. Or there's like a rope connecting them.
Okay, I actually have one laying on my bed because I'm curating my graduation outfits, but I screen printed a bandana on satin because Black women here need satin, Black people here need satin. And from that, I kind of branched out and collaborated with a friend from home who has a crochet brand. It's called GBD Apparel. And basically is a bandana top. And the crochet allows you to adjust and apply it in any scale that you are required to fit it. And so, yeah, that's what they were wearing.
Oh, fantastic. I wasn't sure if they were like tied together or what, but that's super beautiful. And I think that came to mind because your work is so connective, and I love the quote that you said, make work so intimate that it becomes universal, but you're also doing something that's sort of in between where like you have a community being formed around your work and through interaction with your work. And I think that's really amazing and something that is, that so many people need right now. So I think your work is just so generous. And I love that, like Trena said, it is being applied in so many different aspects of your life. It's such an amazing thing, and that energy sort of really comes through. And I just want to mention that the book with the association of materials with human qualities, I thought was also really super interesting. And that study and that understanding of how, the things that you make can be so expressive of different parts of ourselves, and that understanding of how, sort of your brand and the things that you make isn't necessarily about sort of a singular thing, but that it really is so expansive and really speaks to all of these different sides of our experience. So I really love that.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for all the comments. I'm like geeked up. Thanks so much for being here. It's the best thing we could do virtually. So I really, really appreciate this space and time.
Aamirah, thank you. And and everyone, please keep populating the chat as you keep it with praise for Aamirah and any references you think of or any comments that you'd like to make. All right, so let's see. Next up, we have Jonathan, who's a print media major. And Jonathan is last in our wonderful set of presentations. So let's give him our undivided attention and energy. And Brian is his teacher. So Brian, please make your introduction whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yes, I'm very happy to introduce Jonathan Rosalia, who's an artist from Los Angeles and works in printmaking and painting as well. His work conveys stories of indigenous creatures and other species who reclaim and reprimand colonial systems still in place in present-day America. Jonathan?
Hello, thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to share my screen right now. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so hello, my name is Jonathan Rosalia, and this is my BFA conversation and senior thesis. And for what I'm presenting to you, I wanted to start off by naming my presentation Invisible Forces and in Reflective Fidelity and Reclamation. Next slide. So I'm from Los Angeles, California. I was born in Berkeley, but I was raised there, and that's my home. And I've always been interested in art, thanks to my mom and my family, who've been supportive in how I've come up and my passion for it, and always had an interest in it as well, and been in connections, and also had like multiple support groups and people to help me with that. Yeah. And then just a short statement to sum up the overall narrative and thesis of my pieces that I'll be presenting to you. Hidden truths and white lies told throughout history, colonial suppression, and eradication of a culture, facts and stories told about history but never resonating with society. These things are known but never meditated on or represented in the best of ways. The deconstruction of a hierarchy and an imperial system by the reclamation and reformation of one's culture and identity, mirroring realities and historical events, but reconfiguring them into stories and a world where indigenous culture reciprocate energy back to colonial imperialism and reformation for past events and current ones through storytelling. So just like to summarize and like break it down, most of my pieces and characters that I implement within the pieces are of indigenous creatures and species. I give them characters and put them in narratives through stories where they reclaim and reprimand colonial systems and structures and take back the land that was once stolen from indigenous people and tribes that we sit on. And as a person of Navajo and indigenous blood, I never really gotten to touch bases with that side of my culture. And in history, I know the US government has like taken that part and identity of indigenous people and kind of just replaced it with something that is not, and just wanted to acknowledge that and how that connects to what my pieces will be talking about. And then this is my artist statement, echoing back to the previous short statement that I talked about. And then artists that I'm influenced by is Kerry James Marshall. He's a really great painter and artist that I've seen his work in. And just really amazing and breathtaking when you see his work in person, but really great influential artist that I really look back at. And another artist is Philip Guston, and this is one of his pieces, Riding Around. Really great painter and thinking about conceptually and just the narrative of his paintings and pieces and how they bring up conversation of like past and historic events. And yeah, he's just really a great painter and artist that I really look up to as well. And I want to start a conversation and start this presentation off by showing you my late piece, Catch Me If You Can, and it's a screen print. And through this piece, I was trying to create a narrative, and these are the creatures that I've made and characters that I've given within these stories, JB and Russell Crowe, in which I've done research on indigenous and native creatures within the land, and these two are. And I make up a narrative and where they steal from the wealthy and give back to the more in need communities and people, and just kind of like that idea of reprimanding and also the retribution of indigenous culture and the species of the land, and then how they kind of rebel against authoritative figures like the police today, but also back then. And then these two painting pieces, one is a mixed media piece with acrylic and screen and print process within it. And then the other one beside it is just acrylic paint and sumi ink. But just going back to that idea of just rebellion, but also reclamation of this land, and also the idea of just taking back, but how I'm thinking about the whole concept and how a lot of events and also these ideas kind of cycle back in time. Though we're progressing over time as a community and as a society, a lot of these events from the past kind of trickle and echo through current day events as well, and the things that we go through. And first one is prehistoric time, and then the other one is called Surprise MF. This next piece is called A War Within Self. And for this piece, I was creating a series branching off and connecting to indigenous and native spirits and deities, in which I was trying to interpret and recreate, give them characters in which how we used to worship these spirits and gods, but give them an image in which people can see how they would think and process in terms of communicating with each other, and also just how they think amongst themselves. And then this piece, it's a screen print on wood board and acrylic paint. And he's really just thinking, and I did multiple layers through it too. And then the next one is A Clash Within Spiritual Thoughts. This is connecting to the previous piece of War Within Self. And just this was a giant canvas piece and screen print as well, where I made multiple deities and spirits within, and I insert images like I did within my Catch Me If You Can to blow up a bigger picture and show the other world, the earthly world, versus what's within their world, and how they're contemplating and creating and thinking amongst themselves on what they should do next within the lives and within our lives. This is a current piece that I made called Crowded Places, Hidden Faces, and a new character and figure that I've kind of developed called Mr. Green, and is a creature of habit that's reflective towards our society and our negative and bad intent inflicted on the land that we've lived on and stolen. And he's a creature which just, his motive is to take back what was stolen and destroy the development and colonial hierarchies and infrastructures created within our society, but also just bring back everything back to what it once was. And this is a monotype relief and or pastel piece. And then continuing with that, another piece connecting to that is Big Brother, Mr. Green. And with this piece, it's a digital print and piece, so definitely going off from what I usually do, but thinking about that idea of this invisible force looking over us, and how we know, or how some people don't know, that there's something looking over us. But in this case and factor, I was creating a character and his little side characters that help him kind of just tear down these infrastructures and things that we claim to be rightfully ours, or that we've made, and replaced natural things and destroyed natural homes within the land, and just yeah. And then this is a work in progress, but one of my latest pieces, 1-800 You Did This to Yourself, is another digital print that I've been working on, and giving Mr. Green a face in which where he's not always this character with a black top hat and a coat, but also this being and creature that is amongst us, but we don't see him, and thinking about this invisible force, how there's like these things within our lives, our forces as well that affect us and kind of just like take hold within our lives or make us make decisions in which we don't really think about. And I just wanted to say thank you to my friends and family. And this is my email and my Instagram if you want to check out my work.
Jonathan, thank you for sharing that with us. Let's see, Leandra, do you mind beginning this for this last round?
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. That was really beautiful work. I love your illustration style and the way that each individual piece is so layered, but then also the way that they work together. It's so dynamic and like with Clash Within Spiritual Thoughts. I really like the way that there are abstract elements, but it really also reads as a document. And that I thought that was really a nice example of the way that you're working with history and sort of abstracting the forces that are at play. I think that you've really found a very like precise form of expression for the subjects that you're engaging with. And I think a more general comment, I talk often with people about, why certain people are so prone to believe in like conspiracy theories, or that there's a sort of large, sort of group of people sort of plotting everything bad that happens, as opposed to just sort of accepting a sort of more complicated narrative that there are forces at play in society that do create societal problems, but it's not that somebody sits down and plots it out. It's that the systems that our society are built on really create and perpetuate these things, and the systems themselves are sort of the protagonists or antagonists that should be addressed. And so I love that you're personifying these things in a way that is also changing the narrative and sort of expanding, the imagination of what's possible within the timeline of our history. That sometimes seems so immovable to just a single person or just a single person's opinions and sort of moral feelings. So I really love that you're sort of taking on such large subjects through history, but also on a societal level. And I also really enjoyed what you said about the human nature divide, and how in Big Brother, Mr. Green, you have these sort of these flowers looking down at the city also, because people so often think of those worlds as divided as opposed to really coexisting in the same space, even though they might be in different places, that it all is feeding together in a very active way. And it reminded me of Donna Haraway's writing about the Cthulhu scene and how we all are sort of hybrid creatures that exist in both realms, and there's really no separating and no sort of pure nature and sort of evil human sphere. It's all layered in one world. So I really appreciated how thoughtful and how much how intelligent all of these works are in these very simple and evocative ways. Trena?
Yeah, thank you. Wow, that was so well said, Leandra. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, just your process, your layering of processes really speaks to me about the parts, purposes, and complexities of your narrative. And I think that your process is so valid and strong, as a way to develop your storyline and really kind of help us understand like how many layers of complexity actually live in these things. And just, kind of riffing off of what you said too, Leandra, is that, this idea that we have good and evil lives in all of us. And the kind of the menacing, sinister guy that looks like the bad guy to us is actually the guy that's the good guy. That we all know those kinds of characters and stories, and it's just like helping us to uncover, our own troubled relationship to this history, and also, bringing to mind the harms that we might have done towards this end as well. So it's really powerful. And something about your characters, or I mean, the way that you're doing this is actually it's this way of extracting these forces at play and really kind of making them visible for us in this really kind of beautiful way, but yet it's challenging us. I feel that they're very challenging pieces in many ways too, and I mean that in the best possible way. So yeah, I just thank you so much. I think that it's really amazing work, and I'm gonna follow you on Instagram because I want to see where you go with it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan, for sharing. We appreciate it. And thank you for those wonderful comments. And thank you also for going last. I know that's always hard within these situations. So that is the end of our presentation, and I wanted to close with thanking our respondents, Leandra and Trena. Thank you so much for your thoughtfulness today. And I learned, it's wonderful to hear from you and hear your ideas.
Thank you. It was amazing to be brought into this incredible conversation and see this I mean, the work is, every single person's work was so inspiring.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And thank you for everyone who presented: Jordan, Michael, Keston, Ethan, Aamirah, and Jonathan, Johnny. We really, really do appreciate you. I also wanted to say that I really admire, especially just watching these presentations and having the chance to work with a few of you, your perseverance during this time, all of your perspectives, and your productivity too. Like, you really have been making things despite everything else that's happening. And it's wonderful to be in the CCA community with you, and we can't wait to see what you do next. And again, thank you, Jamie, and everyone from the exhibitions team for putting this together. It's a lot of work, and yeah, and you just made it really fun for all of us. So thank you for doing that. I'm again going to put the link to the BFA Conversations playlist, which are on YouTube, into the chat, just in case you want to. Obviously, this isn't going to be up right away, but in the future, if you'd like to share it with friends, families, members, colleagues, other artists, you can do so through that link. And then I guess lastly, I just wanted to invite any of the faculty members who wanted to say a little something at the end. Thank you for letting me moderate. It's been a real joy. And I wanted to make sure you could chime in should you want to.
I guess I can say something. Getting back to the comment about how difficult it was this semester for everybody to make work, and the incredible psychological burden that we all had to sort of exist under during the pandemic. And it all came to a head for me because of the students, and I had to help shepherd their work, and and try to help them maintain their level of activity and their engagement. And I have to say, I really felt at the end of the semester that there was a kind of courage that everybody brought to their engagement with their work, and just even in being in these Zoom classes and trying to talk about very complicated and difficult questions. And they persisted through the whole semester with a kind of vigor and strength. And I just wanted to applaud everybody for coming forward in such a strong way and really making this such a meaningful experience. So I just wanted to thank everyone in my classes for doing that, and for CCA for providing an atmosphere in which all of this can happen.
And Shalini, did you want to say anything?
I just want to thank the students for their time, their diligence, and their hard work. I know it's been hard, and not having maybe that exchange on campus or with each other. And I have to say that I just got transported into all of these different worlds. So thank you. I feel like I just went on this lovely, amazing journey with you all. Thank you for sharing your work. I feel so humbled and just really privileged to be able to listen to the dedication that comes with your work, your stories, your influences, your journeys. It's been really lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shalini. And Julie Khafre had an amazing idea, which is to just take one quick moment for us all to unmute and just shout congratulations.
Nice work, everyone.
Congratulations. Good job. You guys are awesome.
So good. So inspiring.